Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Who We Are podcast. Today I am so excited to have a very special guest with us, Dr. Robert Waldinger. Dr. Waldinger is a psychiatrist, a psychoanalyst, and a clinical professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. He's also the fourth director of the Harvard Study of Adult Development, one of the longest running studies of adult life ever conducted. This remarkable study has been tracking the lives of two groups of people for over 80 years, providing unparalleled insights into what makes for a happy and fulfilling life. In today's episode, we'll dive deep into Dr. Waldinger's extensive research on happiness and well-being. We'll explore the key factors that contribute to a meaningful life, the importance of relationships, how to balance career ambitions with personal happiness, and so much more. Dr. Waldinger will share some of the most surprising findings from the study and offer practical advice on how we can all live more intentionally. Let's dive in. Dr. Waldinger, it's an honor to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for your generous time in being here with us. So, Dr. Waldinger, could you please share with us a little bit about yourself and the study that you did?
My name is Robert Waldinger. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, and I'm the director of the Harvard Study of Adult Development. It's the longest study of the same people that's ever been done. We've been studying 724 families for 86 years, and we're still studying them. And the big question that we study is, what are the conditions that help people thrive as they go through their entire lives?
Could you give us an overview of the Harvard Study of Adult Development that you did and its significance in understanding what contributes to a meaningful and fulfilling life?
We began the study in 1938. So that's 86 years ago. And the study is still going on. It's the longest study of the same people that's ever been done. We study 724 families. And when the study started, it started with two groups. One, a group of Harvard College undergraduate students, 19 years old. And the other group was a group of boys from Boston's poorest neighborhoods and their most troubled families. And the aim of both studies was to find out what allowed people to stay on good developmental paths, both people with a lot of privilege, like the Harvard students, and people who were very underprivileged, like the inner city boys. And so the study was a study of thriving starting back in 1938.
And what do you think are some of the most critical factors that contribute to a meaningful and fulfilling life according to your research?
Well, we found two big things. One won't surprise any of your listeners. It was that if you take care of your health, it really matters for living longer, for having more years when you are free of illness and disability. And that means, exercising, having a good diet, getting enough sleep, getting medical care regularly, not smoking, not abusing alcohol or drugs, all of that, right? And that's not a surprise. The other big finding was the surprise. And that surprise was that the people who stayed healthy and lived longer were the people who had better relationships with other people, people who were more socially connected to others, and people who had more warm connections with others. And we didn't believe it at first when we found this, because it makes sense that you would be happier if you had better relationships. But how could relationships actually keep us healthier? How could they make it less likely that you would get heart disease or type 2 diabetes or arthritis? So we've been working in our laboratory to understand that now for many years.
I'm so interested to ask, given the unique long-term nature of this Harvard study of adult development, which is actually pretty rare that a study has, surpassed like 80 over years of research. What insights have you gained personally about the evolution of happiness and well-being across different stages of life?
Hmm. Well, certainly we know that doing things you care about
Mm,
matters. So having a sense of purpose, knowing why you get up in the morning, it might be to take care of a child or a grandchild. It might be to do work that's meaningful to you. It might be to volunteer for a cause that you care about. Um, but doing things you care about, and particularly things that help other people, that really matters. And the people who lived the most fulfilling lives in our study were the people who took care of other people, who cared about the welfare of other people.
mm,
Um, there's a wonderful saying from the Dalai Lama. He said, "The wise, selfish person takes care of other people." And what he meant was that even if you're selfish, which we all are to some
yeah,
extent, that giving to others, taking care of others brings back a lot of joy. And also people return the kindness when we take care of others. So all of that's important. Um, and then spending time with people that we care about. So doing activities we care about
yeah,
and spending time with people we care about. When our original participants got to be 80 years old, we asked
yeah,
them to look back on their lives, and we asked them, what are you proudest of? And what do you regret the most?
yeah.
And many, many people said, I wish I had not spent so much time working and I
Wow,
had spent more time with the people I care about.
wow.
The other big regret people mentioned was, I wish I hadn't worried so much about what other people thought. And so the messages were, spend time with people you care about and try to be yourself and live a life that feels most authentic to you, in spite of what the culture tells us we're supposed to want and we're supposed to care about.
Yeah. Wow, that is such a great reminder for so many of us, especially in this age where we're constantly trying to build our careers and also spend a lot of time at work. I'm curious also to know, Dr. Waldinger, in your research, how do you distinguish between the quality and quantity of relationships and which has a more profound impact on happiness?
Well, that's a good distinction to make. You're
Yeah,
absolutely right. So quantity is not something we can prescribe for everybody. So there's no certain number of friends that we all need. That some of us are more outgoing
yeah,
and we need a lot of friends. We want a lot of friends. And some of us are more introverted and we want fewer friends because actually being with a lot of people is stressful. So each person needs to check in with themselves about, well, what works for me? How many people do I want in my life? And do I have the people in my life who I want to have, the number of
mm,
people? Um, what we do find from our research is that everybody needs at least one or two relationships that are their safety net, that
mm,
we all need somebody who would be there for us during hard times. At one point we asked our research study participants, who could you call in the middle of the night if you were sick or scared? And almost everybody could list, several people, but some people couldn't list anyone. And
Wow.
we know that if you don't have anyone who you feel you can count on during difficult times, that is a great source of stress.
Wow. And you mentioned earlier too that almost people in their deathbed would say that I wish I didn't spend so much time at work. For busy professionals, how can we effectively balance career ambitions with personal relationships?
Yeah. Well, one of the things we actually talk about in the book that we wrote, The Good Life, is this idea that, that work and life are not separate. That in fact,
Mm,
if you're spending a lot of time at work, that's your waking life. That is your life. Like a lot of the hours of your life are there. What that means is that it's really important to try to connect with people at work.
mm,
Um, and we know that if people do have a friend at work, meaning somebody they can talk to about personal things, they're more excited to go to work. They're less likely to leave that job to go to another job. They do better work as evaluated by their supervisors. They're happier at work, all of that. So the idea is make work a place where you have at least one or two meaningful relationships. Because that will make work more enjoyable. It will make you care about your work more.
yeah, that is so important. And that also brings me to the point on intentional living. What does an intentionality mean to you, Dr. Waldinger, and how can we start living more intentionally?
Hmm. Well, let me go to uh, my Zen background for that. So Zen teaches us that really we can't control how things are going to turn out, right? We can't control the future, right? And that means I can try to do something, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean I'm going to be able to do it. I can't control how it's going to come out. Maybe it's going to have different effects than I expect. So what Zen emphasizes is our intentions. That
Mm,
even if I can't control the outcome, I can set my intention. So if my intention is to do good work, if my intention is to be kind to other people, that's how I set my intention. And one recommendation is that every day we might wake up in the morning and remind ourselves, okay, what's my intention for today? Maybe it's to spend more time with the people I care about. Maybe it's to be kind when I have to make choices. Make the choice that's the kindest choice when it comes to dealing with other people. There are a lot of intentions we can set depending on what we care about the most in our lives.
Dr. Waldinger, in your research, do you see patterns of happiness and mental health passed from one generation to the next? Because also in your research, right, it is multi-generational, over 83 years. So are there patterns that are transmitted intergenerationally, and what can we do to positively influence this?
Well, there is transmission across generations, and that's really important because if you think about it, we all learn about life, we learn about other people first from growing up in a family. So if we learn that people are kind to each other, that we can trust people, that people are reliable, that they'll do what they say they're going to do, if we learn that in our families, that sets the stage for having those expectations with other people as we become adults.
Mm,
If we learn that people are unkind, that they're not reliable, that they're abusive, that's often then what we come to expect when we grow up
mm,
and we leave home. We expect, well, everybody's going to be like that. So I think the thing we can do in our own families is to be as kind, as predictable, as consistent as we can in our dealings with each other, particularly with children, because that's how children learn about life.
such a great reminder. How do you think, after studying decades of definitions on happiness, fulfillment, and meaning. How do people's perceptions of what makes them happy change over the decades? And what does this tell you or us about human development?
We do change in what makes us happy. Not everything changes, but if you think about it, what made you happy when you were 6 years old, some of that still makes you happy, but some of it probably not. You're probably not as interested in playing with toys as you were when you were 6. Maybe you are, but
Yes.
probably not, right?
Yeah.
So when someone gives you a new toy, you don't say, wow, that's wonderful. So we do change. And one of the things that makes us change is the fact that life is finite, that we're all going to die. And as we get older, particularly as we get into our 40s, 50s, 60s, we begin to realize, oh, we really are going to die. Life really is short. And that often shifts our priorities. So for example, as you get into midlife and later, you begin to wonder, what's going to be here when I'm gone? What's going to live on in the world because I was here? What difference, if any difference, did I make? Well, we don't think about that so much when we're 6 years old or even 16 years old as much. So what we know is that the fact that life is limited begins to change what's important to us as we grow closer and closer toward the end of life.
And talking about the end of life, what are some of the most powerful lessons you have learned from the older participants in the study about living a meaningful life?
Yeah. One thing we learn is that it's never too late to do new things. It's never too late to meet new people. It's never too late to make new friends. So we had people in our study, who thought, oh, I'm never going to have good relationships. And then in their 60s or 70s, they found love. They found a group of friends for the first time who they felt really comfortable with. So what we do find is that even if you think what life is going to be for you, you don't know. And that's a good thing because we can all be surprised by what life brings our way. So the important thing is to stay open to that as we get older.
And what were some of the other top contending factors contributing to a fulfilling and meaningful life besides those that you mentioned to us, like the importance of relationships and also health?
Some things about relationships turn out to be important. So one is that relationships don't have to be happy or smooth all the time. And we don't want to give up on relationships when we have disagreements, because every important relationship has some disagreement, always. The question is not whether there are disagreements, but how we work them out. So the goal is to work out disagreements so that nobody feels like they've lost the battle. Nobody feels ashamed or put down, and that we work out our differences, and that allows relationships to thrive and to keep going and even to get stronger. And so when I talk about good, warm relationships, I'm not talking about relationships that are always happy and smooth. It's relationships where we can work out the difficulties and move on together. One of the ways we do that in relationships, particularly, let's say, in romantic partnerships, is to recognize that each of us is changing all the time. And that, for example, if we get married, we're marrying a person at a certain moment in time, but that person's going to change. We're going to change. And it's really important to notice those changes. If you can support the good changes that someone's making, even the changes you don't necessarily agree with, or, you aren't your style. I'll give you an example. My wife and I have been married for 38 years.
Wow.
When we were married, I I had never practiced Zen meditation. It wasn't until like 15 years into our marriage that I discovered Zen and I started practicing meditation and getting really involved. My wife is not at all interested in meditation, but she really supports me doing it. And because she realizes that I feel more fulfilled when I do that. So it could be
Hmm.
anything. It doesn't have to be that. But I think the important thing with relationships is to see if we can support each other in the way we grow and change.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to also, dive deeper into mindfulness and presence. You talked about meditation and the habit and the power of meditation in your life. What role exactly and why do you think mindfulness plays such a big part in helping you achieve a happy and fulfilled life? And how would you recommend for the rest of us to integrate mindfulness into a busy lifestyle?
Well, um, meditation isn't right for everybody. Some people sit down and meditate and they hate it and they say, I'm not going to do that anymore. That's okay. Uh, but mindfulness is really just a way of saying being present for what's happening right now, because
Mm,
our minds carry us off into thinking about the future, thinking about the past. In fact, in some studies, we spend more than half of our waking moments thinking about the past or the future, meaning we're not present. We're not paying attention to where we are right now. The problem with that is that we can feel like we're on automatic pilot. I
mm,
mean, think about when you brush your teeth. Probably you're thinking about something else, right? You're on automatic pilot.
yeah.
If I ask you, which tooth do you start brushing first? You might have a hard time thinking about that because you're just on automatic pilot. That's not a problem. We need to be able to do that sometimes, but being present at least some of the time, really paying attention.
Mm,
What's here right now? I'm sitting in this chair. I'm talking to you, right? I'm really aware of what's happening in this moment. It makes us feel more alive. It makes
mm,
us feel like we're not sleepwalking through life. And it doesn't have to be by sitting on a cushion and meditating. It might be that for you, working in your garden brings you right into the present moment. It might be that it's skiing down a ski slope or uh, playing a game of soccer, or I don't know what it is, but for
yeah.
often, or playing music. Some people have ways of coming into the present, of leaving the thought loops behind and just being present right now. And what I would say
Mm,
is what I hope for people is to find some way to do that, whether it's meditating, doing yoga, playing a sport, whatever it might be, doing art.
mm. In our digital age, how do you see technology affecting our relationships and well-being?
Mm. Well, we're all worried about that, of course. Some of the research now shows that the way we use technology makes a big difference in our well-being. That if
Mm,
we use technology to actively connect with other people, it actually makes us happier. So, if we use social media to connect with people we knew when we were young and we keep contact with them, that makes us happier often. If we use social media to scroll through other people's, curated lives where they post their happiest pictures, then we feel like we're missing out. We feel like, oh,
mm,
my life isn't always good. Like that looks good. And so that makes us less happy. It lowers our self-esteem. It often makes us more depressed or anxious. So the difference seems to be between actively using social media to connect and passively consuming social media. That passively consuming social media makes us feel worse.
yeah. And what role does purpose and meaning, two of some of the biggest words that are thrown around today, What role does purpose and meaning play in contributing to someone's happiness?
Well, we know that having a reason to get up in the morning is, what we call purpose.
Yeah.
I do this because it's important to me. I do this because it means something to me. Um, Gives us more energy. It makes us want to be more active in the world. And having more energy, being more active, um, is part of what sustains our health. Our bodies are meant to move. We're meant to be more active with our brains. We're meant to keep going in the world, even as we get older, to stay connected with people. And so having a sense of purpose and meaning about what we're doing, often keeps us doing all of those things, staying connected, being more physically active. And so finding that is something that each of us can do. And there are even exercises. You can even go online and look for little questionnaires that will help you figure out, well, what do I care about the most? And then to think about, well, if that's what I care about, how could I express that in my daily life? It's possible to do that, even if right now you're thinking, I don't have a sense of purpose. I don't have a sense of meaning. You can find that. It's possible.
So good. And for yourself, what areas of research are you most excited about for the future? And what do you hope to discover next?
Hmm. Well, I'm interested in how we can stay connected to each other in the digital age. So, we're all worried about that. We're worried about the effect of smartphones on children. We're worried about the effect of remote work on our ability to be connected with other people. So what I'm interested in discovering is ways to stay connected to each other and and feel more socially engaged, even in the digital age, because the digital age isn't going away, right?
Yeah.
We're not gonna get rid of our screens. So how do we use them, and how do we avoid the ways that screens can harm us?
And looking ahead, Dr. Waldinger, what are your hopes for the future of research on happiness and well-being? And what do you hope to achieve with your ongoing work and also like the book that you wrote, The Good Life?
Well, what I really want is to get these ideas out to more and more people, because I think that this idea that social connection is so powerful to make a good life, that
Yeah.
on the one hand, this idea is really simple, but most of us ignore it. We take relationships for granted. It's like relationships are like the thing that's hidden in plain sight, because we've always had relationships. We've never been in the world where we didn't have relationships, except perhaps during the pandemic. And so most of us take it for granted. And so what I want to do is spend a lot of my time talking with people, just as we're talking, about how important this is and what a powerful tool this is for making your life better.
As we wrap up, Dr. Waldinger, what are some final words or message that you have for all of us in Asia who's listening to you?
Well, I would say, check in with yourself and ask yourself the question, do I feel as connected to other people right now as I would like? And then if the answer is, I'd like to feel more connected to people, think about two things. How could I be more connected to the people who I already have in my life? How could I spend more time actively reaching out to them? And the second question is, how could I make new relationships? Perhaps by doing some activity with other people, volunteering for something I care about, and meeting people that way. So first, check in with yourself. Do I have enough connection in my life? And if not, how can I strengthen my current connections? How can I make new connections?
because relationships at the very end of the day, according to your longest research in Harvard, shows that it is the single biggest contributor to a fulfilling and meaningful life.
That's right.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Waldinger. For those of us who want to continue to follow you and your work, besides getting your book, The Good
Yeah.
Life, where else can we follow you on social media?
So on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and I have a newsletter you can subscribe to. Probably the easiest way to find all that is on my website. It's robertwaldinger.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Waldinger.
It was a pleasure.